In this presentation, we will cover Chapter 6 of the Communication Systems book, and in this chapter, we're going to talk about sketching. Now, sketching at first might seem like a kind of an outdated and a skill and a practice that really isn't used anymore, but actually sketching is still incredibly important. So one of the first things we're going to look at here is, why do we sketch? Well, first of all, sketching is a preliminary approach to a problem. Typically we don't just sit down into our advanced CAD system or our 3D modeling system and start just putting together or trying to solve a problem. So often we start with a sketch. And so it's kind of the first step that we start with in order to work through a problem that we might have. It's a quick method of communicating ideas visually. Again, it takes a lot of time to boot up a CAD system and get things drawn in there where you might only have 10 seconds. And in that 10 seconds, if you can draw up a quick sketch, you can communicate what you're talking about visually so much quicker than actually have to try to do it with CAD or even with technical drawing tools by hand. Additionally, it's a way to communicate it visually. We can talk and talk and talk about what we're trying to do or our idea that we might have, and we still might not be on the same page. But when we come back and I show you a quick sketch, like, oh, okay, I get it, and we can move forward. So it's a way to communicate visually. It's a way for us to give support personnel a better picture of the idea, and that's kind of related to number 2 as well. It gives them a picture of what we're talking about. Number 4 here, a method of recording notes and changes made in a shop or on a prototype. There are many times that we come up with a drawing, we take it to one of the shops or the labs or production areas, and our machinist or somebody or our contractor might be working on it, and they might say, you know what, I got your drawing here, but this is just not going to work. And so it's a way for them to communicate, to record notes on that drawing, send it back to the people working on the computer and say, okay, we need to make this change. A lot of times we have great ideas and good things in theory, but when it gets to actual practice, gets out in the field, it's just not applicable. And there's always that kind of the adage between, the engineer and the person actually doing the construction on the site, where, sometimes some things really look good on paper, but in practicality, it just doesn't work. So sketching is a great way for that technician to be able to make notes on that technical drawing and send it back to the engineer, send it back to the our CAD drawers, and to allow them to rework it to make it right. And then lastly, it's a way to aid the think-through process in terms of coming up with solutions to various problems. Sketching is just a great way for us to kind of think through what we're doing. Let's say, for example, we might be designing a bathroom. And so sketching is a great way for us to kind of just draw it out real quick, move things around, see how the walls are going to work. It just helps us think through the whole process that we're going to go through. So we have some basic rules when we do sketching. First of all, we don't use scales or tools. We don't get out our CAD systems. We don't get out all of our hand or technical drawing tools that we might have. It's just basically plain and simple, whether it's some type of writing tool and some type of surface to write on. You'd be surprised on the number of brilliant ideas on the things that have come about that were basically drawn up at on a napkin sitting going out to dinner. So maybe you have a business meeting, you're in a business lunch, and you're out there and you're talking about things, and it's quick just to draw something on. So or it may happen out on the ground. You're on a job site and you need to come up with an idea. You may not have a piece of paper and a pen right there handy. So you kind of clear out some space on the ground and draw on the dirt. So we don't use scales or tools. However, we do want to draw proportional, meaning that things should look how they are going to end up being in proportion to each other. Now, we can use scale, and we can scale things down to look smaller, but from one point or from one part of the object to the other part of the object, it should be proportional. We can go ahead and use line contrast, and so we can use objects and hidden lines. We could also make it darker or thicker in order to try to emphasize different parts of what we're trying to sketch out. As I mentioned, you can use scales, and not scales like actually get out the measuring scales, but you can scale things smaller or bigger to help them look more visually, help you see them better as you draw them. So small objects can be sketched bigger than normal size and vice versa. And it's okay to use dimensions. So if you want to put some dimensions on there, again, you don't get your tools out and write on there. However, you might need to communicate in this sketch, okay, this is 4 feet long, and there's nothing wrong with drawing that sketch on there. We have a couple different types of sketches that we can work with. One of them is a multi-view, which, as its name implies, it has more than one view on there, and so we can show the different sides. Traditionally, we show the top, front, and right side view. So on this example here, which is not necessarily an actual sketch here, but we can show, in this case, it's a top view, here's kind of the back side view, and a side view. And so in a multi-view drawing, we can use different sides. Again, typically we'll have the front view kind of right here, a right side view over here, and then a top view up above. And so we can show those. So in each one of our views, we show 2 different dimensions. So for example, here I'm showing length and width. In this view over here, I'm showing width and height. And in this view up here, I'm showing length and height. So the combination of the 3 views gives us all the 3 dimensions that we might need, but each individual view only shows 2 dimensions. The other type of sketch that we can do is a pictorial sketch, and this is a picture-like or a 3-dimensional-like drawing. It's not a true 3-dimensional, but we give it the visual impression that it's 3 dimensions, and so we can use this type of sketch here. Again, to come back as you see these examples, if we were doing an engineering project and we had to come up with a structure, we had to come up with one of these contraptions here, whatever they might be, we could go round and round and talk and not really know what what each others are talking about. Whereas if somebody comes down and sits and sketches something like this out, they say, oh, okay, I get it. And from there, we can begin modifying it, changing it, and start constructing it based off of that preliminary sketch. So sketching is still incredibly important today. It is a skill. It takes some practice. Obviously, if you have some artistic ability, that's going to help you out in terms of doing sketching. But even if you don't, that doesn't mean you disregard it. You need to practice and develop your skills because as you get out there in the field, there are going to be all kinds of times when you need to sketch something, and your ability to communicate that visually to somebody else is going to be an important skill.